bloodsucker. You know what I mean when I say that, right? Someone or something that wants to suck the blood right out of your body. Like, for example, a vampire. You remember those old movies? I want to drink your blood. Or if you prefer the Spanish version, the chupacabra. Same kind of legend. Or maybe when you hear the word bloodsucker, you think in terms of something like a mosquito lands on your arm and then starts sucking blood out of your body. You could even think in terms of the financial realm. Someone with no scruples who preys on others who are vulnerable and desperate and takes advantage of their difficult situations, trying to squeeze out of them just as much money as they can possibly get. We call that guy a bloodsucker. Now, however you use the term, let me tell you that Moses has a rule in Leviticus 18 through 20 that we can apply to bloodsuckers. Specifically, he says, no eating or drinking blood. Leviticus 19:26 says, do not eat meat while the blood is still in it. Now that verse is part of a larger set of rules about animals and butchering. When you're preparing meat to be eaten, you have to use bloodletting. Now what that involves is first, as you kill the animal, you slit the throat, let the blood flow forth, and the animal dies. Then you hang the animal upside down, let the blood drain to the ground. And then having done that, you can then proceed to eat the meat. Now that rule applied to domesticated animals that you raised for food, as well as the wild game that you go out and hunt. Now Moses had a clear rule that said, no eating a strangled animal. And by strangled animal, he refers to any animal who died without bloodletting. You find a perfectly good deer or some other animal. He's just lying there dead. That's good meat. Except if it wasn't killed by slitting the throat and turning up to let the blood drain, you're not to eat the meat. So in other words, for dinner tonight, no roadkill. Now Moses had a penalty. If anyone eats meat that has not been properly butchered, they are to be cut off from their people, exiled from the community. Now, if you're wondering about that hamburger that you ordered at a fast food drive-in, don't worry about it. In Western tradition, we still practice the same kind of rules that Moses gave back in the law. It's part of our Judeo-Christian heritage that carries over whether people realize it or not. Our meat has been butchered the way Moses said it ought to be done. But you may still ask the question, but who cares? I mean, in our modern age, why should we care about how to butcher meat? Does it really matter? I got to remind you, Acts chapter 15, the Jerusalem council that met included the apostles, the elders of the church of Jerusalem, other church leaders. They're trying to determine out of all the law of Moses what will still be required of the church. What do Gentiles need to do as they become part of Christianity? Now remember, there were 3 sets of rules that come out of Leviticus that they said, we're going to hang on to these. One set was the porneia rules. We will not practice sexual immorality. And Moses gave a long list of some of the sexual acts that would be considered porneia, immorality. We've studied those. Also, there was no food sacrificed to idols, part of the foreign god rules. We're coming to those shortly. And then the last one, no drinking blood, no eating the meat of strangled animals. And that's the butchering rules of Moses. They were kept by the Jerusalem Council. Now, Moses and his butchering rules, his blood rules, they go back to creation. They're creation mandates. And thus they're there long before Moses ever comes along and turns them into rules for the Jews. God the Creator had already given these guidelines. You go back to Genesis chapter 1. You'll see God portrayed in Scripture as the creator of all things, and that includes all the living creatures of earth. He's the one that created them and gave them life and breath. And thus, if you're to eat the meat of any of his animals, you're going to kill them and eat them. It's going to be done only because God authorized it. In other words, God the Creator is the one who says yes or no to whether or not you can eat meat. Now in Genesis chapter 9, verses 3 and 4, as Noah was coming off the ark, as the human race was beginning fresh all over again, he's the new Adam, his wife the new Eve. Here's what God said to Noah. Everything that lives and moves will be food for you. I gave you the green plants, And that's what you saw back in Genesis chapter 1. I gave you the plants. Now I'm going to give you the animals as well. But he says, you must not eat meat that has its lifeblood still in it. The draining of the blood began there with Noah. Now, why is it so important that the blood be drained? Because blood is a symbol of life. Leviticus chapter 17 explains the life of a creature is to be found within its blood. You think about the symbolism. When you picture blood flowing within a body, then you're alive. Picture blood flowing out of the body, blood being shed, and that's a symbol of something that's dying. So the eating and drinking of blood would be a disrespect for God's authority. It's God in heaven who determines whether or not you can eat this animal, this piece of meat. But if you eat the meat with the blood, it's as if you're exalting your own authority, your own power, as if I killed this animal because I wanted it, and it did so by my authority. That's why there's an ancient tradition that you'll find a lot of the pagans, as they would kill someone that was a powerful opponent. It might be some great monster, if you will, or some large animal, or an enemy in war. When they had conquered someone or something, they then slit the throat and took the blood and drank the blood as a sign that I vanquished you. I'm the powerful one here. What God said is, don't do that. You pour the blood out on the ground. Pour it out before me and acknowledge that you're eating this because I said so. You're able to do this under my authority. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 23, Moses says, you be sure not to eat the blood, because blood is the life, and you must not eat the life as you eat the meat. You pour it out on the ground like you would pour water. As you pour it out before the Lord, you're showing respect for his authority over life and death. Now, as far as application today, missionaries sometimes have to deal with this, because while in Western culture we're not so much on the eating and drinking of blood, missionaries run into cultures that have been doing that for a long time. They have to challenge those blood rituals. Likewise, sometimes as you travel the world, you'll get to a place where the chef has created this special cuisine dish, and it's just soaking in the blood because, well, it tastes so good. I'm going to recommend you pass on that dish out of respect for God. And big game hunters, even here in America, sometimes will kill their first deer, their first this, their first that, and as part of a tradition of hunters, take the blood and take some of that blood. I'm going to recommend once again that you pass on that. And even if you're thinking, yeah, but everybody else does it, remember, be different, be better, be holy. Show respect for God, the creator of all life. Now let me shift my focus, though, from animals and shedding their blood to human life. You see, when it comes to the shedding of human blood, that is the ultimate blood offense. And there are severe penalties for those who shed the life of a human being, both on this earth as well as in heaven. There are penalties to be faced. In fact, the key penalty that you'll find as you go back to Moses is life for life, blood for blood. That's how God spoke in Genesis chapter 9 when he spoke to Noah coming off the ark. I'm going to require your lifeblood. From every beast, from every man, I will require an accounting for the life of a man. If any human or any animal kills a human being, then I want life for life, blood for blood. Whether it was intentional, that would be murder, or accidental, what we call manslaughter. Either way, I expect life for life, blood for blood. You see, the shedding of innocent blood, someone who doesn't deserve to die like that was a big deal. Now, Moses will clearly distinguish between that and what we might call judicial killing, where it's done for the sake of justice, under the authority of government, like a defensive war effort, or capital punishment, or self-defense. What Moses is going to tell us is, if murder is going to be wrong, it's the wrong shedding of innocent blood. It's willful, intentional killing of an innocent person. And capital punishment was given by God to Noah in Genesis chapter 9 for that very purpose. Whoever sheds man's blood, then by man his blood is to be shed, because he has assaulted the image of God. It was a way of showing respect for God's image. It was dealing with the issue of blood. Likewise, manslaughter. Manslaughter is accidental killing. And you didn't mean to do it. It was an accident. It's still a serious matter. Do you know that in the law of Moses, he still required a life for life, blood for blood? If you're thinking, wow, I can't believe that I can do an accident and I got to pay with my life, here's where Moses was merciful. Moses allowed that the high priest of the people, his death could count in behalf of everyone who had accidentally killed someone. He was a substitute death. Well, you can see where that leads us to Jesus Christ. He's the ultimate shedding of blood. He's the most innocent life that ever lived. He's the purest, most precious blood that was ever shed. And as our high priest, he is our substitute death for all the terrible sins that you and I have done, sins that are worthy of the God's wrath, worthy of death. His death is for our death. He is the ultimate life for life, blood for blood. That's why you and I always say we've been saved by the blood that was shed for us by Jesus Christ. I still encourage you to honor the old blood rules that go back to creation. First, out of respect for the authority of God as our Creator, the Creator of all living things, but also out of respect for Jesus Christ and the blood He shed for us at Calvary.